Warning, due to some language and subject matter, listener discretion is advised.
There are very few things in life more therapeutic than dropping a needle down on a 12-inch piece of round black vinyl. Between the warmth of the sound or the crackle and surface noise of your favorite record, there is never a time when a sense of comfort and nostalgia isn't triggered. And just like your favorite record, life's journey always seems more fulfilling when it comes full circle. My next guest is a well-known club DJ who goes by the moniker DJ Sweetlife. I've known him for over 20 years. He's a former bandmate, not to mention a fantastic guitarist. Today we'll be talking to Eric Swanson, and it's been way too long since we've done this. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Caught on the Mic. Eric, it's been a long time since we've done this, man.
Man, yeah, I'd almost say forever. At least the podcast part.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the last time we got to hang out together for an extended period of time was probably 2001, like right before you moved to, I believe, South Dakota?
Yes, North Dakota, man.
Dakota,
oh,
right.
Man. Yeah, dude. Life was moving in slow motion just because I didn't want to leave. Like, things were like falling together and all that, but you kind of know a lot of the backstory, man. It was just,
absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a steel trap up here. I have this weird savant-like memory where I can remember
Nice.
dates and times and weird things like that. So
good, because like last week is pretty much a blur for me. So anybody who can kind of ground me to where I've been or where I might be going, I'm totally all ears to it.
Fantastic. Well, let's introduce our listeners to you a little bit, and why don't you tell us all a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. Hey, so my name's Eric. Just pretty much a regular guy with some kind of maybe some extraordinary circumstances. I don't know. Came in contact with this guy, Mike. So that's definitely a plus.
Likewise.
But yeah, it's just been a long, strange trip. We'll probably catch up on what music, kind of what we've been up to.
Absolutely.
Pat ourselves on the back because we're not dead yet. So.
Thankfully. Not for lack of trying.
right. But yeah, so funny story. I've probably been back here in Omaha area, Nebraska, about 10 years, this iteration. But I think this is going to be for good. I love it here. I still kind of get culture shock on a semi-daily basis. I didn't grow up here, so I've always kind of felt like a fish out of water. And my friendships here have been very select, but very like, but once I find them, it's like, yeah, okay, cool.
Absolutely.
We're good.
Absolutely.
But yeah, just when Mike hit me up about the podcast, at first I was kind of like, man, how can we make this, work logistically, COVID and all that. But it just came together, man, and it's a great outlet. I'm glad to be here, and if you guys got a few minutes, I'll kind of tell you my angle. So.
Awesome. So you said you're not originally from the Omaha, Nebraska area. Where are you originally from?
Yeah, so I actually grew up in California. I was born on the Central Coast. At the time, my parents were in the my dad was in the Air Force. My parents were married, etc. They ended up splitting up, so I was kind of a Air Force brat, but like we grew up kind of in California, typically around Air Force towns, etc. Our upbringing was a little different just because I don't know. My brother and I, we were always kind of going against the grain, but not like in a rebellious way, but it was always more of like, well, why are we supposed to do this? Why are we supposed to do that? Etc. So for me, growing up, like I had a very diverse group of friends and things like that, but it was basically me and my mom the whole time. My mom works very hard, but I was the king of the latchkey kids. Came home left school, made sure I got to school on time, got home, figured out how to make something to eat, whatever. Yeah. One of the things in my life that kind of just kept me focused, etc., was always music, and I never knew that it was such a force in my life. Like everybody's like, everybody likes music. Oh yeah, you like music? Yeah, I like music too. Oh yeah, so do I. Oh hey, we all like music. Look at that. But I think for me, I didn't realize when I was a kid I would have a visceral response to music, almost like an empathic response to it. It took me a long time, like into my adulthood, to realize like music was something I had to do, which is kind of a strange evolution, and it's definitely how Mike and I came in contact. And Mike's been part of that evolution. It's he doesn't know it, but he has been. And yeah, man, it's weird to come full circle and talk about this. I'm kind of new to this. I don't really know what to say. I guess my path with music just started. I was a little kid. MTV was pretty much raising me. So, the guitars were on point back in those days, and everybody played one. Every band, it was instruments, it was, musicians. I told my mom, I was like, hey, I want an electric guitar. And, my mom wasn't really throwing money around like that back then. So, or now, but, her condition was, well, it's kind of an investment. I need to see if you're serious about this. Why don't you play another instrument first? We'll see how it works out. So I'm like, all right, I see how this goes. Okay, cool. Yeah, let's see where this goes. So I get to elementary school. Oh, hey, they have an orchestra here. Cool. All right. Well, yeah, let me sign up. Let me check this out because I do want to get a guitar someday. So I think the only instruments they had left was like flute and violin. And I was just kind of like, ew. And I think I actually wanted flute instead of violin, but I ended up with violin. So I was like, all right, here we go. My mom knew about it. So it's like, she just waited for me to fail. I couldn't go out that way. So, I learned it. My teacher at the time, Susie Ochi, I will never forget her. Prayers to public school teachers who just are just committed, just rabid about their job. She taught me music. Enough to kind of think of what's in your head to get it out, which was amazing. And I didn't realize it then as a kid. So after playing violin, eventually for my school orchestra, I ended up getting first chair. Like it was kind of cool. Like I didn't realize that I was doing a pretty decent job with violin. Then I got to all city orchestra. Oh, this is great. Summer workshops, things like that for violin. Great. Finally, I guess, I don't know, I'd accrued enough credits to get the guitar. My mom bought me the guitar. That was the last day I played violin ever.
But you gotta admit that experience with violin probably helped lend credence to your guitar playing at some point in time, just getting you acclimated to strings and melody and such.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Looking back, I was like, there's almost no better way to go. And I mean, and no disrespect to trumpet players who later on become guitar players or whatever, or vice versa. But like if I had played trumpet or something, like it wouldn't directly correlate. So
no,
yeah,
I can attest to that. I was a saxophone player that attempted to become a guitarist that settled on just getting behind a microphone. So.
Right. And the thing about sax, at least sax kind of has a chance because you can bend a note like a guitar.
Right. But it was like the 80s, so for some reason people thought saxophones were cool because there were saxophone solos and songs, and I'm like, man, there was that shirtless dude in the Lost Boys.
Right. Absolutely, man.
Yeah. So cool. So tell us a little bit more about the guitar playing. Did you start getting into bands right away, or did you take lessons, or?
Yeah, so my mom, initially, I was just trying to learn how to play by watching MTV. So that definitely, probably the only song I ever nailed was Tom Petty's "You Got Lucky." The irony is there. And if you hear the song, like if you had never played guitar before, you could probably just be like, jump right in. Anyway, so that was the first song I learned to play, but I guess my mom maybe got tired of hearing it over and over and over. So she finally did get me some lessons. But the lessons moved a little faster than I liked, or kind of in a direction that I felt was a little too pre-planned. Sure. So it was kind of cool to get the basics and things like that. But most of the time it was just like learning by ear, which later on hurt me, but then I learned to recover from it.
Right.
But yes, because why bother with all this theory stuff when it can just sound good?
Right. Absolutely. I mean, that kind of applies to so many players that I know that like end up starting off learning by ear and then having to go back and reteach. Like, I don't know how to use my pinky properly on my left hand whenever I try and play guitar. So it still looks awkward whenever I'm making a basic bar chord, or if I'm trying to do a little run with some with a scale or something.
Right. But you got to think about it, though. And this is another thing, too. Well, I presume we'll probably touch on this because we're two old heads here. But you'll also find out there's things playing-wise you weren't meant to do.
Right.
Because there's other things you do way better.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So, yeah. And that's the thing. And that kind of goes back to my original lessons where, it was pinky discipline and blah, 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 and all that stuff, which is great, but it may not be you.
Right.
So, yeah. Anyway, but that, a little foreshadowing there, I'm sure.
So, about how old were you at this point in time?
So, at that time, so I'm about 10, 11 years old, summer break, got the guitar. Of course, it wasn't the one I wanted. Right. But, yeah. Right.
It never is.
It never is. Right. More on that later. But I just mainly MTV learned how to play things, etc. But like bands, I had actually tried to put a band together in elementary school for the talent show.
Yeah.
We've all seen this movie before, but mine never even got past the trailer. They just canceled it in committee. So never got a band together, but I was just that kid who would just go home, play guitar, stay off the streets, whatever. But none of my friends played instruments. Where I was growing up, nobody did.
Yeah. I was in a similar predicament, but it was later in life, in high school, where so I grew up in big cities my whole life until I got to high school. Then I went to a rural town, which is completely backwards of most people. And it was like I had to teach some of my friends to play instruments in order to put some of my early bands together.
Yes, dude.
And it's like, can you hold a root note for a couple of minutes? Well, I got a bass player, so on.
Right.
But,
no, absolutely. And it's funny because then when you think about that, that's how like we came together. Because I had heard the music you guys were doing.
Right.
And I was like, oh shit, these guys get it.
Yeah. Well, for at the time we got it. Sure. Right. It's got its filter of innocence to it, I'm sure, to some degree. Yeah. So at some point in life, so you get to let's say you get to elementary school, junior high school, you're acclimated to playing music. Yeah. What other things were you into at that point in your life?
So man, the funny thing is then at this point, then you're kind of living like a double life because you're like a black kid in an urban school, but you like you like people that play guitar. You like guitar riffs. You like the melody. You like how it's put together. You like the aggression of the music, etc. So that's one thing because at the time that in that locale, that wasn't what you go for. Like, that's not no. So at that point, guitar is a very important thing, but it wasn't like there was no outlet for it for me,
right?
Other than just like putting a record on and trying to transcribe something or whatever. But at the time, I was pretty much like every other kid. Now that I look back, like high school is way more complicated than we give it credit for.
Oh, absolutely.
But yeah, I was just kind of a kid who I kind of knew everybody, but like I wasn't really like out there or anything. And later on in life, as trying to always force myself to be extroverted, I realized I'm an introvert. But that doesn't necessarily mean you're a shy person or anything like that. That just means you need detachment.
Right.
And when you need your detachment, you need it. So for me, playing guitar was that for me. At the time, hip hop was coming up and things like that. So, you'd see a few things bleed over, like with what the Beastie Boys were doing and things like that. And it was just like, this is amazing.
Right.
But in Central Coast, California, that wasn't really happening. There was no traction for anything like that. So
merging the styles was more of an East Coast thing.
A
lot of it because of Rick Rubin and being in the in New York City.
Yes.
But yeah.
So I mean, and at the time, one of their songs, "Fight for Your Right" had a solo break from a little known guitarist at the time, Kerry King, who just went on to conquer the world. I don't know if you've heard of a band called Slayer,
right?
But anyway, it's so things like that. So for me, it was always kind of in the periphery. I hadn't even been in a band yet. Like, so by high school, whatever, it was weird. That was kids just weren't doing that where I was from.
After high school, you went on and joined the Army, correct?
Yes. So, yeah, man, things as we graduated, and for some reason I graduated when I was 17. I don't know if I started school early or what, but at 17 they were like, "You're done." I was like, "Sweet." And then my mom was like, "Well, what are you going to do now?" And I'm like, "Well, technically, I'm not an adult yet. I got some time, blah, blah, blah." But as things went on, like my friends that I graduated with, we were all great kids and stuff like that. Like we weren't the trouble kids, but attrition was getting us.
Right.
So, Army recruiters calling me, Marine recruiter, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, fuck off, fight your fucking war. Fuck the man. And, but then one day I called them and said, all right, let's talk. So that seemed to be kind of the only way out of what I was like doing or where I was living and things like that. Just opportunities just weren't falling out of the sky. So anyway, joined the Army, 8-year hitch right off the bat. Like, hey, yeah, what could go wrong? But loved it. I don't really elaborate too much on my service. I love every moment of it, though. Love everyone that I've ever met. If any of my comrades come by me and they need something at any time, like we will catch up. We will make it happen. But I luckily, by grace of God, I got accepted to go to West Point for a few years. That just kind of the officer and gentleman corps wasn't really my thing. So what I did there was a military maneuver called 2 and Screw, where you can go to West Point for 2 years and you owe them no obligation.
Oh, nice.
If you stay after that, then you do. Now, anyway, trust me, they got their money's worth. But anyway, then with that, then I came back to the regular Army, which is kind of what I wanted the whole time. And but then then I think ended up getting married, kids on the way, things like that. The Army summer camp life wasn't gonna hack it,
right?
And you want to do what's best for your family. So ultimately, that's what brought me back to the Midwest. My dad had always lived here. I would come visit. Loved my dad, loved my stepmom. But Omaha was just kind of like, whatever, man. Like, and I came from the Central Coast of California, so it's just like, it just never really resonated with me. But when I finally moved back here, because my wife, at the time, she was from Omaha, and Omaha was just the center of the universe. So we naturally had to come back here. So came back, started having kids. I was in college, working, all those other things. Still, at that time, I don't even think I had a guitar.
Right.
At that point. And I was missing it tremendously, but really no outlet. Things changed, started having some time on my hands, etc. I think the first band I was in was EKG, which was actually a great band. And if I ever run into those guys, I want to apologize for acting like a spoiled teenager sometimes in the band. It was all me. You guys were great dudes. But anyway, I forgot how EKG fell on my radar screen. I think at the time I just wanted to play. I finally got a guitar. People played instruments at that time. There were big stores that like weren't chain stores where they sold musical instruments.
Yeah, right.
You knew the guy that,
right.
Yeah. So, and these were also like meeting places too. Like the bulletin board there was like, that was it. That was the network. There were venues to play. People came out. And I'm not saying that they do or don't now or whatever. Like, I get it. Life happens. But I just feel there was more traction back then.
Oh, absolutely.
For what people were trying to do in bands. But so at the time, and one thing I also kind of learned as a musician is there's guys that are great cover musicians. They're fantastic. And then there's guys who can kind of play what they're thinking, and they're fantastic. But it's weird because sometimes you feel you have to be a certain type versus the other.
Yes.
Luckily, in Omaha at the time, there was a very strong original band movement.
Yes.
The vast majority of bands were original bands,
yep.
And they sounded like original bands, and they had a sound that was unique to the area at the time.
Yeah.
Like, come see me on that. Like, Omaha doesn't know what it had, but the bad part is the rest of America didn't know what it had.
Right. And I do think I think you hit the nail right on the head. It was like, it's funny. This is foreshadowing a future episode to some degree, but Omaha had a sound where a lot of the local bands sounded like national signed to a record label bands. There was this pool of talent where like your B and C level guys would probably be looked at as A-level guys right now.
Yes, absolutely.
And honestly, and I'm sure that this is going to be a reoccurring theme because we're both guys that have fallen in love with the city over time.
Yes.
And this is going to end up kind of turning into a love letter to Omaha. But it was amazing because I was in a similar spot. I was in Iowa, and I could go to Des Moines or I could go to Omaha. And I looked at what Des Moines was producing at the time, and I looked at what Omaha was producing at the time, and there was no way I was not going to go to Omaha.
Right.
It was the diversity in the style,
right,
and just the constant quality that was being turned out by the bands that were creating the art there at the time.
Yes, absolutely. So inadvertently, like, I didn't see it for what it was at the time either. I was pretty much just like everybody else. I just want to find some other guys who want to make some noise.
Right.
Play with some distortion, whatever. Yeah, I mean, we really didn't know what we had. So I think with EKG, for some reason, like I said, I acted like a spoiled teenager. So once again, guys, my bad. But then I eventually wanted to be in another band, though, that was had a little bit more of a versatility with sound. But of course, we already know, like, you can't just form a band in Omaha. You got to find a drummer first.
Right, absolutely. Drummers and bass players are a hot commodity in Omaha.
Yes. So that's your first step, man. So somehow, I don't know how this happened, but this must have been a glorious day when it happened. I ended up in Doug Decker's basement, and with a bunch of original ideas, and we just jammed the fuck out for hours. It was just fucking amazing. So I'm like, okay, cool. This guy gets it. All right, cool.
Right.
All right.
Yeah.
So, we tried to bring bass players through, or I tried to find somebody who played bass or whatever. It just wasn't really panning out. And Doug was awesome. We had some great ideas and things like that. And he could be in the pocket. He could just like go over the top, just that fucking punk ska polka beat on crack. Yep. You know what I mean? So that was awesome. I finally had found an outlet. It was still never about really getting in a band, but it was more like, if I have to get in a band to do this on a regular basis, yeah, sure, whatever.
Right.
So there was Doug, but at that point, like, Doug was awesome. I don't even think he was in any bands or something. It was bizarre. He was like this unicorn.
Right.
So after that, like, I was like, fuck, we can't put anything together. So let me see what's out there. Now, Mike, I hope your memory suits better than mine does on this, but I think I came across the 3/4 Evil ad, maybe D-Rocks or something on the bulletin
board. It was either on a bulletin board or something, or it might have been on one of the local websites, message boards or something. Right,
like my second choice would be like Slam Omaha.
Yeah,
maybe.
Yeah, because if I remember correctly, I got a sound clip emailed to me, and it was you playing guitar.
What?
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Yeah. You emailed me a sound clip of playing guitar, and I'll never forget this because I was going to hit on this anyways, but this is perfect segue. Do you remember the first time we met?
No.
Oh, no. This is great.
Oh,
this is great. Right. This is great. Damn. So, and this kind of goes back to where you were at in California and you trying to put together a band. So you send me the sound clip, and it's fantastic. And we kind of had our first iteration of 3/4 Evil put together, 3QE, whatever you want to call the band name. Just don't call us early in the morning. And Jeff and I decided to answer your ad. I was impressed with it, and so we decided to go over and meet you at your apartment. Okay? So we get to your apartment. This girl answers the door, and we're like, okay, this is cool. You come out into the living room and you're like, oh, you guys are here to meet Eric, right? And we're like, yeah, well, let me go get him. And you go and you hang out in the bedroom for a couple of minutes. And then you come back out and you're like, I'm just kidding, I'm Eric.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Holy shit. Oh,
and it
man.
was fantastic.
Oh my
I was
God.
like, I love this guy right now.
Oh my God. Further proof that if current me met past me, I would want to kick his ass.
No, man, it was perfect. That was perfect. That was perfect. That is like Sociology 101 of the best way to test some motherfuckers you're about to play music with.
Holy shit. I got to be honest. I wish I could say I knew what I was doing, but at that time I hadn't played with anybody else. So maybe that's a little bit of why.
Yeah. So, and it's weird, not to go into the full deep history of 3QE, 3
I love
Evil.
this, man. I love that you can remember these things.
Oh, man. Like I said, I got the savant nature in me that I can remember this stuff. The funny thing about that is we had a different drummer at the time, just didn't fit the mold of what we were trying to do.
Yes.
And then you brought Doug into it, and that's ultimately, and honestly, that added a layer of polish to the band that we didn't have prior.
Yes.
So, giving props to Dougie D, as I later knew him in life, Dr. Teeth.
Right,
because he's the most smiley motherfucker you can ever meet.
But that is the story. Yes, that's right. Because initially, I kind of diverted with what you guys were doing, man. And I remember listening to one of your demos, and the demo for Smoke. It opens up with a D major 7 chord, and I was like, "These are my guys."
Yeah,
bam.
I wrote that.
Bam. Yes, I know you did. I know you did. I heard that. I was like, that's some shit I would want to get down.
Right.
So,
but the thing is and I don't think, if we were talking the history of that band, and I don't think a lot of the people that are outliers to that band really knew it, but it's just, we were playing with a limited skill set. That eventually it matured over time. And it's like honestly, 3QE ceased being what it was in about 2003. Mm-hmm. And I really wish you were with it for the full ride.
Man, that's a whole other episode.
Yeah, that's a whole episode. But man, I tell you,
and I never went back to California either.
Yeah,
I went east. I ended up going east.
Yeah. Well, anyway. What we ended up becoming, I think I'm really proud of. The only thing is you never get a second chance to make a first impression.
Right. Yeah.
And I think we made our first impression when we were a little bit greener. Mm-hmm. But if we would have refined it over time, and this is something. You said on the onset of this episode, there are things that I brought to you that impacted you. There are things that you brought to me too. and I've never been able to share that with you because we've never had this conversation.
Yeah, man.
But if I were to look back at my past musical projects and I had to do it all over again, pulling the reins back a little bit and spending a little bit more time to polish that band with who we had in place.
Yeah.
Before we jumped on a stage, man, I would do that all over again, dude. And I would pull the reins back, polish the shit out of that band, and then put us on a stage. But the thing is Omaha was hitting so hard at the time. If we didn't strike while the iron was hot, I probably would have never made it to the levels that I did with other projects that preceded that band.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So it's I don't know. It's a pretty foolhardy train of thought to go back and think about it. So.
Yeah, no, it was amazing. So like I heard your guys' demo, and I was like, and my influences back then were like kind of my influences weren't bands, they were guitarists.
Right.
So like Dr. No from Bad Brains.
That's something I'm always going to remember is Dr. No, and you were into Lagwagon too.
Oh, yes. And they were from Santa Barbara too. So Lagwagon, who else? And then anytime I need to think of an influence, then I just blank out. But at the time, it was just the guys kind of blurring the edges, like Dean Pleasance, the guy from Infectious Grooves,
right?
Anything Rocky George and Steve from Suicidal were doing. Mm-hmm. Who else? I mean, naturally, you had to love Kirk Hammett and Cliff Burton. These guys, man, locked in the pocket,
right?
But anyway, but there was something going on in Omaha. Like it was weird. It was hard to explain the style, but there was a lot of traction going, and we had that. It's just with me, the way things came together, though. I know, man. I already know where you're going with that, but that's a whole other episode. But at the time, as we built that band, and just it was an outlet for us,
right?
But it was so essential. Like we loved it, man. It's just what we had. Did we not play my wedding?
Yes,
we did.
I remember. I think we covered young MCs bust a move like
Yes.
10 times that night.
Yes. That was awesome.
It was awesome. It was an honor too. It was a good time.
No, that was awesome. And weddings are so awkward anyway. That's probably the only way I'd be able to get through one. But more on that later. But yeah, so at the time, 3Q is awesome. Like I think also it's weird though, because I think people weren't used to seeing black guy jamming out on guitar, a little heavy on the distortion, but also Mike was a funky ass white boy too. So it was like, it was a weird.
Well, that's why you and I have always clicked. It's like it's not about culture or color. It's just about being brothers. You know?
Yeah, man, absolutely. It just came together.
Absolutely.
Like we never really had the discussions because it was kind of a non-issue.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure, man, for sure. Absolutely.
But one of the things that I've always enjoyed about you, and as you just shared, you've enjoyed about me, is the fact that we did have such diverse Jekyll and Hyde tastes. Like we could go listen to the Kirk Hammetts of the world and then turn around and listen to Tribe Called Quest and absolutely love life.
All day, man. Yeah, absolutely.
Again, throwing another thing back to you about an influence you had on me is some of the hip hop stuff I was into. Like it was more the positive stuff, like the Tribe Called Quest, the De La Souls, and groups like that. And I think that was something that you and I had a mutual respect on.
Right.
It's
absolutely.
Just like,
Well, and that's the thing. That's when you realize there's so many genres and things like that.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah,
like now that I'm not doing the band thing, that's my default shit. Like, my default music is hip hop. Like the only time I really listen to hard rock anymore is like if I'm having a shitty day and I'm jumping on the treadmill.
Right.
Then I listen to my hard rock stuff. Or if the weather is really nice and I want to drive fast in my car, I'll throw on some old punk rock or something along those lines.
Definitely.
But yeah, absolutely.
Man. Well, I'm glad that got a chance to resonate you, because then, as you know, like later on, I ended up becoming a DJ, like a club, East Coast club DJ.
Right, and that's exactly where I was going to go next. It's like, because I remember.
Oh, this is going to be good.
I remember suggesting that we get a DJ for our project at the time, and you fucking hated DJs.
Yes!
And then you become one.
Oh, yes! Absolutely. So, I mean, that's not like 6ix9ine level of betrayal, but it's pretty close. So, yes, there's a story behind that. So, first of all, just let me preface this with DJing. It's so funny. Like, for those of you who could kind of care less, like just gloss over this segment. But for those of you who are kind of like, you know what is it about? Like, there's a psychology to it. Why do I see some DJs and I feel this way, or I see some they feel this way, or I feel others that are just more like fly on the wall? Like, what is it? And this is just like you can think about this until it drives you insane as like a DJ / performer entertainer. But I absolutely hated that idea.
Right.
To circle back, at the time, guitars. First of all, I thought DJs were stupid. When venues started booking DJs and things like that, I was like, "What the fuck? This is like that's 3 bands now that have a night off over the nonsense. This guy playing records that everybody knows. You know what I mean? Like." I don't want to get too far on it, because then the bigger hole I got to dig myself out of at the end. So anyway, things happened in my life. Once I left Omaha, like naturally, I tried to put bands together. They just never had the chemistry that we had in Omaha, things like that. It was getting a little bit more difficult, by that time, like, I had children and things like that. I got custody of my oldest son too, which was a miracle, but that was amazing. But at this point, it's like, Mike, as you know, bands are like a marriage. So, but there's in bands, sometimes there's even less pluses than minuses.
Right. Yeah.
So at that time I was like, I still have to connect with people through music. Like I'm still an introvert, but sometimes like when you strap the guitar on, or when you whatever, I don't have to directly communicate, but I still can. I need some kind of outlet. I have to, there's some way I have to be able to do that. So the only few things that I could think about is, oh, I could be a solo singer songwriter. I don't have that gene. I can't do it. Mike, God bless you. I can't do it. Guitar or singing, it's one or the other. That's it.
Right.
So, there were very limited options. So at the time I was living on the East Coast, and, there was kind of close to where the epicenter of DJing started, Bronx, New York. The party on Sedgwick Avenue, which was like attributed to be the birth of hip hop.
Right.
Cool DJ Herc or something threw a party in a rec center and was like, "Hey, it's back to school. We need some clothes, whatever. We'll charge such and such." And then it just blew up. Like, it created a culture. That's a whole other discussion too. Mm-hmm. But over on the East Coast, the approach to DJing is a little bit more rooted in that aspect. DJing is more of a social movement, or something that just immediately like makes that location like the place to be, the block party mentality, the things like that. So my next thing was, my kind of option for that was something solo like DJing. So at the time there was a club or something like that. No, I mean, there were clubs everywhere, but there were some you liked, some you didn't. Some had great DJs, but you didn't know it at the time. You had to be paying attention. You know what I mean? Like, who's the DJ? Oh, okay. Yeah, I remember there were half as many people when he was here, but like the roof was on fire. Like,
right.
With that, there was one DJ particularly, dude, and this is fortuitous right here. Cap C, if you could hear this, man, like, he created my desire not to necessarily be a DJ, but I'm like, he was the DJ like that. I found myself like, we had a great time. Right. Who was the DJ? Oh, it was that guy.
Right.
Him. Oh, all right. So, naturally we're following him around. And this is at the time where it's like, I still think DJs suck, but if I got to go out, you know what I mean? Like, this guy makes sure I have a good time. Like,
right.
What's up?
Yeah.
So, at that point I was like, well, I want to be like him. Like, I didn't know about the technical part of it or whatever, but I'm like, he's bringing all these people together. Like, he's the man. So how do I get in on that? I like to perform. Okay. So, I initially bought some equipment. Oh, this is also another dichotomy. This kind of goes to the cover band musician. God bless him. He'll eat forever.
Yeah.
The great songwriter musician, but like, it's original material, right. You got to sell it. The same thing with DJing. Even if you're starting to get into it, you have to understand, do you want to be a big box DJ? We don't turn down any party. Like, we got balloon animals, we got whatever, photo booth. Or do you want to be I want to connect with people through records DJ? So for me, quickly I found out there were two differences there.
Right.
So I'm like, you know what? Actually, I'm not even in this because I don't even want to be a DJ. I just want to figure out how they're manipulating these records. So I'm like, all right, let's figure this out. Bought some records, bought some turntables. Cool. Horrible. Shoes in a dryer, man. Just like tried it for a couple hours. Was like, oh yeah, this ain't gonna work out. Didn't touch it again for maybe like 2 weeks or so. So what I found out was like, well, my kids were sleeping or stuff like that. I just put the records together, and it was like, well, if this DJing thing doesn't take off, I got some great records, right. And this extra turntable now that I'm not right. going to need. But I just kept practicing at it. But I approached it like a guitarist, though. And luckily, from the songwriting, like how we would put bars together, like bars had to mathematically make sense.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that I already had a head start on that, like phrasing and things like that. You as a DJ, you got to break a song down into the chorus, verse, blah, 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 when to come in, when to come out, things like that. These are the things that I was figuring out when I decided I don't want to be a big box DJ. I want to be a connect with people records DJ. It was never about like going to the club or second income, second hustle, flyers, whatever. I just wanted to, at this point, then I was getting all these good records. So I was like, people got to hear these. Like, I'm not even going to apologize for some of these. They're amazing. So I started getting pretty decent with it, blah, blah, blah. I had a little bit of a style. Luckily, the section of town that I lived in at the time was very artsy. And I knew a lot of artists. And they were extremely talented, but, didn't have a lot of money and things like that. So it was like, oh, you have such and such warehouse for a show? You and like 5 other artists from the East Coast? they'd be like, hey, can you do some atmosphere, like some DJing, whatever? And I'm like, yeah, I can do it. I'm like, what do you got? Because nobody's gonna work for free. So what we did was kind of a thing where like, oh, hey, I like this painting. Okay, cool. Let's do a 4-hour show. So here's the thing: once you tie this visual aspect with the music aspect, it just blew up. So it became First Fridays in Bethlehem. Amazing. Just the place would be packed. Like, just me on two turntables playing whatever, old disco records, beat matched, all that stuff.
Nice.
Yeah, it really and it was funny because the owner of the place, John, oh man, I'll never forget John. And John's instrumental in me even like DJing for people, because he was just like, we've never had an atmosphere like this before. He's like, you just like, because I'm always surveying the crowd and things like that, trying to throw in the curveballs and things like that. So that was initially kind of how it started off. I wasn't in it for money. No, it's like, we'll provide an atmosphere, whatever. The artists were selling shit. It was good. People were hanging out. Like, it was a very inclusive environment. So one day I was doing it, and that same DJ, Cap C, happened to be at the show that I was doing. It's huge art show, right? So he's like, hey, and I was like, yo, you're Cap C. He's like, yeah, hey, man. He's like, you're doing your thing. We got to catch up. He's like, I got this DJ collective. He's like, we're pretty selective, whatever. We're trying to make some moves. Let's talk. I was like, right on, man. So here's the thing. Like I said, I never wanted to be a club DJ, but for what he did, like, I totally respect it. I totally got it. He was that dude. We ended up catching up, just talking about records and things like that. And he was instrumental, because then at that point, the big box DJ approach was completely off the picture, because he's the dude who'd always just like spun what that moment needed.
Oh, awesome.
So yeah, and just really brought it out. So once he kind of took me over under his wing, like, he taught me the business of it and things like that. And again, still, I don't want to be a club DJ. He had like several residencies, but sometimes he couldn't be more than one place at a time. So he'd be like, hey, can you fill in for me? Whatever. Here's kind of the format. You know what I'm saying? Like, don't fuck it up, because I'm not going to put you back on. Right. Blah, blah, blah. I was like, yes, sir. Okay, cool. But it was still never to get in there. Then the crash hit, the economic crash.
Right.
Then it was like, okay, this is something I can monetize right now, because like at the time I owned my own business on the medical side, but people pay you when they pay you. Right. And with that, I mean, that's the good news about being in your own business. You're never broke, because people always owe you money. So technically you have some income. It's just the rate you can't control. So once that hit, then I had to totally reframe it. And Kelly at the time, I think I had done some like little artsy, ravey type thing, whatever. And she was like, look, we'd come home. I think we were hanging out in the garage or something. And she's like, you know what? Like, you got to decide what you want to do with this. You can monetize this. Like, this is conveying emotion, and there's a way to capitalize on this. There's a way for businesses to use this to their advantage. And I was like, you're right. Like, I have to start looking at this as a business now, like as a hustle, because that's what it is. Like, there's so many intangibles that a good night or a good atmospheric night of music or whatever will do that you just can't replicate, because it's another unique piece of the artistic puzzle of the event.
Yeah. 2008, of course, is about when this is going on, because this is when the crash hit. But simultaneously, just to kind of tie our stories together a little bit, that's kind of where I started to take the original band thing to more of a scalable model, to where we were making cover band money as an original band, because it just was like, man, if I've got kids now by this point, like, I'm not going to leave my house if it's not going to be worth my time, and if it's not going to be a self-sustaining entity.
Yes. Oh man.
So it's like this thing needs to pay for itself, because I'm not going to throw any more of my own personal money into it.
Right.
So it's kind of sounds like you were in a very similar spot.
It's so funny, because I probably have said that same thing almost verbatim.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so with bands also it's compounded because you need time to rehearse and things like that too.
Right.
Which takes you out of the picture.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you got to find like an awesome, super supportive spouse. But then in some cases, it's not really fair to expect them to take that completely by the horns. You know what I mean? Without some concessions on your end.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes. So it's funny that you mentioned that. And that's another thing too. So like with DJing, it was like, if you have a good night, that's you. If you have a bad night, that's you. Right? Like there's no two ways out of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was another thing as well. But no, I hear you. So that was the other thing. Like I needed an outlet. I still needed to connect with people. Right. I still liked music. I still like to force my musical tastes on people, etc. Hopefully for profit or monetization, etc.
Right.
So I was very fortunate in that area, and especially since I was kind of between New York and Philly. Philly had always been very diverse, where DJs would play anything. They'd mix a rock record into a hip hop record or something like that. So like if you listen to some of those old like Tribe records, that 94, 95 BPM just knock. There's so many classic rock records at that same BPM that they sampled the hip hop song from to begin with. You know what I mean? Like why not play with that theme or whatever? So kind of learning back there, like you had to be good. It's
right.
And nothing to take away from the market here in Omaha, but like I'm trying to figure out how to word it delicately. Like back there, if it doesn't move their feet, you don't eat.
Right.
You know, and you got to come up with very creative ways to do it, and also to make your performance unique.
Sure.
So there is no formula. To a certain extent, yeah, you could play the same set list every time, blah blah blah. But eventually somebody's going to catch on, and it's the same energy.
It's also a numbers thing too.
Yes.
Like it's a numbers thing because you're in a big market, like someplace like Philly, or like if you're on the West Coast, or if you're on the East Coast, if you're in New York City or LA or something. There's 10 other guys that do it just as good as you do, if not better than you.
Right.
So it's like you have to like. And this again, man, not to take away from our love letter to Omaha, but in Omaha, it's like you're you. You have the opportunity to be you. You can be your only you.
Yes.
So it's like, and that's just because of sheer population and sheer numbers.
Yes. And that's a good point as well, because when we finally, so the crash hits. My medical staffing business at the time was very successful beforehand, but then after that, it was not great. Revenues were down. It was taking longer to get paid. Luckily, I had this DJing thing, and people still wanted to, on the East Coast, if they wanted to party before the crash, like they really wanted to party after, because it was the crash. Like, who cares? So DJing was pretty steady, man. Like, and what had happened was I was part of a bigger collective that Cap C had put together. He had handpicked some of the most amazing DJs. Luckily, I was considered to be among their company, and I cherished every moment of it. But he just, at that time, like he just had the pulse of the market and good guys to cover it. You know what I mean? And like you said, there's 10 other guys. Some of them are even better than you, but they may not be a better businessman or whatever. You know how this, we've seen this movie before. So we were very fortunate. We're eating, you know what I mean? Like people think bad things are happening, etc. But finally I got the opportunity because, when we met, I was still going to Methodist College here in Omaha.
Yep, you sure
Okay, yeah. So I got the rare opportunity. Kelly came across the opportunity for me to come back and teach the course that I graduated from.
Oh, wow.
Here in Omaha, right?
Wow.
So at this time on the East Coast, DJing is paying the mortgage. It's paying the bills, blah, 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 you know?
Sure.
Yeah, I got to go to Philly this day. I got to go to New York this day, blah, blah, blah. But people there, they like to party, they like their music, they like the East Coast DJ culture, those records from that era, and you're the purveyor, you're the curator of that. Right. People are very and believe it or not, here in Omaha, people are very musically open too. They just need to be comfortable being sometimes the only one that's comfortable with that. Because on the East Coast, anything goes. If it's a hot record, they like it. Right. You know what I mean? Whether they heard it before or not.
Right. There's definitely a herd mentality in Omaha to some degree. I mean, that applies to any kind of art. Like, nobody's going to believe you're good until somebody else tells you that they're good. Right.
Well, absolutely.
And that's not an indictment on Omaha as it is. It's just how the culture's different.
Right. And to underscore that, and I hope this didn't come off the wrong way, I haven't changed a thing. It's like Omaha has accepted me for that style of DJing. 2 turntables, microphone, cutting, quick mix, cut the beat out of one, a cappella over the other, all live, etc. Classic records, things like that. So the funny thing, so kind of back to the story with this, I was like, at the time, teaching seemed like a pretty stable job, blah, blah, blah. I was like, you know what? I've done everything I need to do out in the trenches in the medical field, blah, blah, blah. Let's go back and teach now. And my teacher that I had, Steve Hess, was amazing. He was like a second dad to me out here, like just a great guy. So for me to come back and like take the mantle of his program was like, this is amazing. And it was. But anyway, I was like, you know what? If I move back to Omaha, though, like, they're not going to get it. Like, I'm going to have to quit DJing. Like it's over. They don't know who I am. They don't care. So I flew back for the interview with Kelly. We and this was when Omaha was kind of doing big things. There was a club we went to, and they had a DJ in from the East Coast, just killing it. I forgot who it was, but he just nailed it. So I was like, you know what? Maybe we can make this work. Sure. So the next day we went out for coffee, and me just being the typical, Pollyanna that I am, some guy kind of looked like he knew what was going on. I was like, hey man, so we're from out of town, and where the DJs at here and stuff like that. Like, how are they? Well, what's the music like? He's like, hey, and I kind of explained the situation. We were thinking about moving here, and he's like, yeah, you want to get a hold of Chris Jones. This is I don't know his number, but here's his brother's number. Give his brother a call. I was like, this guy probably thinks I'm not going to do it. I'm going to do it. Like, I'm that guy. Yeah, for sure. So finally, I get in touch with Chris Jones, who, like, Chris had been all over the place, DJing like Vegas, all kinds of places. Chris, and he's a fantastic DJ, right? With that, so I got in touch with him, and I was like, hey man, I'm thinking about moving out here, but like, I think I might have to hang it up because, first of all, I'm coming from the East Coast to Omaha, Nebraska, so I'm already picturing like a certain type of market to begin with, and he's like, yeah, don't worry about it. So he did some research on me, I guess, found out that I was legit. I ended up having to take the job anyway. But before we moved here, he already had like shows lined up for me. Jeez. I was like, dude, he's like, yeah, hey, I got 2 shows for you, like right when you get there. I was like, wow, okay. And I was like, listen, man, like, thank you, but like, are you sure? He's like, no. He's like, I did some research. I was like, right on, man. Like, yeah, let's do this. Yeah. So right off the bat, Chris Jones, like, that's always my dude for just putting that together, because the fact that I could DJ definitely like mentally saved my life, many times.
You made a mention about how it's psychology, to a certain degree.
Yes.
So what goes into making a night a good night?
Yes. Okay. So there's so many factors, and I'm probably going to miss a whole bunch of things, but at least when you're there in the moment, it really comes together. So first of all, it depends on the type of event. Like, you can see a great club DJ who would be a shitty wedding DJ, or a great wedding DJ who's a shitty club DJ, or a great club DJ who's a horrible event DJ, right? Or blah blah blah. So there's a different mindset, like psychology. Yes. So the club is probably the easiest mindset to do, depending on the time slot or whatever. And where I'm from, like, you did the whole night, 4, 5, 6 hours. Like, that's you're on the bill, like you. So with the club, it depends. You got to kind of meet people where they are when they're coming in. So it depends on your market. If I'm at the corner bar, I go on at 10 o'clock. People are just kind of chilling right now. It's not time to hit them with the bangers yet.
Right.
You want to build up that alcohol floor, because what you're really doing, I don't care what anybody says, the job of DJs is to make people dance. It's to sell drinks.
Right. Absolutely.
It's to make fucking money.
Right. Yep.
That's it. So the psychology of it is the corner bar, 10, 11, 11:30, you're just playing good drinking music. You want people nodding their heads. You might get a few party buses where they've already got like a 2-hour head start.
Right.
Go in for a little bit. You know what I mean? You're there to sell experiences. So you're building, right? Okay. The crowd will rotate. You can't take it personal if people leave. Sometimes their sitter just flaked or something like that. You never know. You don't know what's going on in their life. You have to play the long game. So many angles for this. So that's the corner bar from 10 to 11:30, right? The club is different. The club is ideally they want to be high energy from the get-go.
Right.
So if you're in a nightclub district too, that further adds to the energy and generally how you can pop things off much sooner because that's what people are coming there for.
Right.
So for that, still though, you have to be strategic with what you play, when you play it, how you play it, how long you play it, things like that. So sometimes the oldest songs get the best response at certain times. These are all the things, and it changes night by night by the dynamics of the crowd, where you are, what's going on in the outside world, things like that. The other day, actually, I spun an election night party.
Right.
And yeah, both the candidates that hired me, they both won their races, but it was just psychology with keeping the whole group together. You know what I mean? But anyway, sorry. So the club, like you want to build that up, but it's energy management. You know what I mean? And you got to you also have to look at the people that are interacting and who aren't, because you're always going to have diverse types of people. You got to give everybody a little bit of what they're coming for. You also have to make a crowd that sometimes is diametrically opposed to each other fall in love with each other. You know what I mean? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So when you take it to that, and thank God it's fed me for all these years. You know what I mean? Just that whole mentality. So now the wedding DJ, etc. Yeah, that's a whole other aspect as well, and that's
like
a whole
charted beats to a certain extent.
Yes, pretty much. So here's the thing: as weddings, people getting married now, they're younger though, etc. They've been exposed to DJ culture. They want that for their wedding now.
Right.
They want that. They want somebody who, after the cake cutting, is going to turn the place into the club or Studio 54 or whatever for their family, friends. A smart DJ in that aspect is going to play, family friendly, clean music, which to me goes without a doubt. Like my philosophy is a little different from other people's philosophies. So with the wedding now, you're going to have a cocktail hour. So you don't even want people dancing at that point. You want people mingling. You want enough ambient background noise because as they're drinking and they start talking louder and louder and louder, they need that buffer. You know what I mean? So people can't hear each other's expressions or what they're talking about. Just setting that atmosphere. People, they've been at the chapel all day. They just want to come back and have a drink.
Right.
Cocktail hour. Gotcha. Then later, the wedding party is going to line up and things like that. You have to introduce. There's a whole nuances, and they're fighting you every step of the way because you get every lined up, and then somebody disappears. Oh, I gotta use the bathroom. Oh, I gotta go get a beer. So there's a lot of that where it's more of relationships, not necessarily technical skills. But people are getting smart now, and they're needing those technical skills at the end of the night.
Right.
So that's where, guys like me, I've been blessed. I stay busy. I try not to take on too many weddings because they're a lot of work, but they're a lot of money too, etc. But just from those three examples too, if you don't understand those approaches, you won't do that again. And you may not want to because it'll be such a horrible experience for you.
Right. Yeah, it's listening to you talk about this, it's very similar to people management too.
Yes.
Like if you're leading or managing an organization, you know that right now in the workforce there's as many as 5 different generations working, and each generation requires a different management skill set.
Yes,
because you have to figure out what their currency is. So if you're managing golden agers, baby boomers, Gen Xers, millennials, it's a different management style for every single generation.
This is coming a little smoothly from you, man. What, you're gonna have to expand on this management thing.
No. We don't get into my day job.
Right.
but no, I mean it makes perfect sense because at the end of the day, you're dealing with people and you're dealing with people's emotions.
Yes.
And different people handle things differently. And especially from that emotive standpoint.
Yes. And how many times has a song, music in general, or something pertaining to music saved our lives mentally, emotionally? You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So that's the thing. It's that other thing. And music is such a subconscious, subliminal thing. But in a way, it's like hypnosis. Don't get me wrong. There's some people that no matter what, they're not going to like the DJ.
Right.
They're not going. And it's like hypnosis. You have to want to be hypnotized.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So once I was kind of taught to approach the business like that, then it's like to me at least, I've always been able to You know what I mean? I've always been able to build a client base. I don't advertise or anything like that. I just been blessed. I got great clients. I stay busy. It's nuts. And I hated DJs. Like I said, I just kind of got sucked into it.
And look at you now.
Right? Yeah,
right. So what's your go-to track? What's something that you, no matter what you're DJing, who you're playing to, what's something you sneak in there that's for you? Because I know there's got to be something for you.
It depends on this. Well, here's the other thing. As I've gotten older, there's more of those tracks that pop up in sets, and they're met like with, oh shit, oh damn, and it's okay. But it, like I said, it really depends on the setting. Any kind of First Friday type thing, any of the old like James Brown breakbeat type things. Some of the old like graffiti rock stuff. That's all the artsy hipster stuff.
Right.
Old school like electro, Man Parish, stuff like that. In the club, it's mainly just kind of old school East Coast hip hop. I'll sneak in. But I'm pretty flexible.
Yeah.
Generally, like when you're setting up, you're surveying the crowd. Like if you're smart, you're surveying the crowd already thinking about what you're going to open with.
Right.
Because you have a make or break moment there. Like, I'm not going to open up with some trap song. I'll do it later when they're all drunk 3 hours from now. Hell yeah, they're going to love it.
Right.
But, you're surveying what you're going to start off with. So sometimes you'll survey and you'll have like 10 songs in your head that like, yeah, I'll definitely do this. And then you don't. It turns out you don't. And you have a fantastic night.
Right.
So it just depends. Like, you really have to have a certain amount of, you have to be a certain empath. So it's hard to say one track that always works, but I don't necessarily play it all the time. But generally, if you play Mary J. Blige Family Affair in any setting, they get it. It's just a Midwest thing, man. Yeah. Like, you can never go wrong. If you don't know what to play, throw that on and you got 3.5 more minutes to figure it out.
That's a great mindset. That's fantastic. You've established that you're a multifaceted musician. Because I view a DJ as being a musician.
Yes.
No, and not enough people view it that way, but I view a DJ as being a musician. As a multifaceted musician, have you found that your musical tastes have seasons?
Yes. Okay. This is a great question. They have seasoned, but in also many, many circumstances, that eclectic music taste has also been vindicated.
Right.
Because there's like, and it's kind of like what you alluded to. There's times where I'm like, nah, fuck them. They're gonna hear this. Like, there's no way I'm not gonna play this.
Right.
Like, and 99% of the time, it's like, it's that thing that makes it different, that makes it unique.
Sure.
So wait. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there. What was the question again? Let me redirect.
Do your musical tastes have seasons?
Yes. Okay. Yes. And so, like, for instance, in the club or even for events, that you will play different songs, different times of year as well, that aren't specifically seasonal songs or anything like that.
Yeah, right.
But yes, the something about the key, something about the time signature, things like that.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it just depends. Summer is generally more airy, light, insipid stuff. But it depends. It depends, though. It depends on the venue. Some venues are specific for what they want.
Right.
Like, I mean, I love nights when I go to 415 because they already know EDM is the thing. Like, we're gonna do it all iterations, man. Like, I'm going in classic house. I'm going into whatever. I don't do a lot of progressive because I hate progressive house. Edit that out before the torches and pitchforks show up at my house. But
sure, yeah, I find that as a listener. That's how I adapt every year. I'm sitting by the pool. I'm going to listen to like some reggae. I'm going to listen to like something that kind of inspires that moment.
Yes.
When it gets to this time of year, I notice that like the hip hop that I traditionally love or the rock music that I traditionally love goes by the wayside, and I'm like throwing Thelonious Monk on vinyl, or I'm listening to like Vince Guaraldi, like the guy that does all the Peanuts music.
Yes.
And it's just like, or even like, I'll catch shit for it, but I'll own it. Like, I love crooners. Like I love listening to somebody like Michael Bublé and just like this time of year because it just fits the mood.
Yes.
And it's one of those things where you can fight it or you can just embrace it and love the moment that you're living in.
Yeah, absolutely. But you're right. Music is that language though. Certain songs, certain keys, certain time signatures, certain song structures. Yeah, man.
Yeah, so I've been pulling up my phone because this is a good opportunity to drop this quote because I think this is one that everybody will feel. And it's, if art is how we decorate space, music is how we decorate time.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah. Absolutely. And that's how it needs to be considered. Like when I heard that, I was like, that makes sense. That because it's time and then what? Frequency, amplitude.
Right.
Time over frequency, amplitude. That's what it is. The root of every song or musical piece. But yeah, definitely seasonally music styles change. And speaking of a funny story, so I'm about 2 days out since I've actually discovered Robin Trower.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Really?
And in that 2 days, Bridge of Sighs has pretty much been on repeat.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
And so here's the thing. When did that come out? 1973? That song is so relevant now. It sounds like it was written yesterday.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just the mood, the structure, everything.
Right.
So, yeah, it's just one of those things. I mean, if music transcends time, then it definitely has seasons. You know what I mean?
Right. So what's somebody that you're listening to right now?
Man, so what totally, and I'm glad you asked this, what totally blew my mind, and I'm kind of late to the party on this, but if you get a chance, check out Krungmen.
Huh.
Oh, so they have a guitarist, Mark Spear. Brilliant guitarist. Funny story, I guess. It's a power trio. Laura Lee on bass, Mark Spear on guitar, and a guy named DJ on drums, who's like the ultimate pocket drummer. But they are just, for a power trio, it just sounds so much bigger than it is. And he's just an amazing guitarist, but not a flashy guitarist. It's all like kind of melody. They don't have a singer. The guitar is the vocalist.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Judah Bauer from the John Spencer Blues Explosion, like really high on my list of influences now.
Nice.
10 years ago, I would have been like, who the fuck is this guy?
Yeah, right.
But now I'm like, how did I not know who the fuck this guy was?
Right.
So, but yeah, I'm trying to think other bands to listen to right now. Krungmen though, man. It's a cheesy name. They actually, the story behind the name, I guess they were going to change it, but they got popular before, because the name was like a joke. You know, they were just like,
it's kind of like Three-Quarter Evil.
Right, exactly right. Hey, but then things started happening, and it was like, we gotta own it. We gotta own it. But yeah. So let's see. I'm trying to think. I don't know. I still listen to the '90s stuff, though. I still listen to. Yeah, all of that stuff.
Because that's really weird. Because I found like when I was actively doing bands, there were certain genres that kind of got pushed to the wayside. So if I was doing like a heavier like punk kind of bridging on metal band, that's the type of music I was listening to. So my love for hip hop might have gotten pushed to the wayside while I was in that creative mode, listening to this other stuff. So I'm going back and I'm finding stuff that I've missed over the past 25 years plus.
Oh my God, dude.
Yeah. So like one of the hip hop groups that I just rediscovered, and of course everybody's all the heads are wagging their finger at me. Souls of Mischief.
Yes.
93 Till
Legends.
Infinity is like anytime I'm driving along, I have to listen to 93 Till Infinity because I love that song now.
And that's one of those good old start to finish hip hop albums.
Yes, absolutely.
You can listen to it from start to finish.
Absolutely.
It tells a story.
But
it goes somewhere.
there's bands on the rock side and like guys that I wrote off as being cheesy. Like honestly, one of the best guitarists of our recent generation, you got to put his personal crap to the side. John Mayer. I've come back to John Mayer, but I hated the guy because I was stuck in this like well, that doesn't fit the punk rock mindset, so
Right,
he's got to be crap. But now we're all adults, and we're all kind of like...
Which is so funny, because I'm sure you probably heard the Try album. And
yeah, absolutely.
That's what did it for me.
Yeah.
That's what did it for me. Like, it's not John Mayer's fault that he's immensely talented and writes catchy songs that trust fund babies love, and they got the money to go to his shows and pay him. Right. That's not his fault.
Right.
He is immensely talented and just amazing. And that's the thing. Yeah, you have to circle back to this. Like, now suddenly, the Cars, kind of pop punk, whatever. I just realized I never liked the Cars. I liked Elliot Easton, the guitarist.
Right.
Dude, the checks that they made him cash with some of those songs, some of those rhythms.
Yeah.
Like, this is kind of like new wave, but country at the same time. So, you know.
Right. But I mean, but then again, you kind of find you find out that some of the bands that have been popular in the past 20 years, you go back to their influences, and the Cars is a good example of that, because without the Cars, there would be no Weezer.
Yes.
And I mean, despite the fact that Rick Ocasek produced their first album.
Yes.
But without the Cars, there wouldn't be any Weezer.
Yes.
So.
Who Rick Ocasek initially could have been like, who the fuck are these guys?
Right. Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
And he made history.
Absolutely. So one of the things that inspired me to do this episode in particular, not only because I view you like family, like every time we get together and every time we talk, it's like we just left off from where we were 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, was just kind of revisiting some of these things that made us excited, and maybe kind of looked at life through a little bit more of a lens of innocence to some degree, to where we're optimistic with how we view the world, because it's easy for us to get stuck in these honey traps of being pessimistic every day with what we're inundated with sociologically, on the news, on social media. How do we restore the innocence of then to the lives that we have now? What is our path to doing that?
Oh, man. First of all, that's a question we need to ask ourselves every day, just to remind ourselves to stay focused on it.
Right. Absolutely.
But I can only kind of speak to what's worked for me so far. I mean, as anybody listening to this knows, we've had a rough go these last few months, Yeah,
absolutely.
And one thing that has helped bring the innocence back for me, and I hate to pull everything back to music, but in a way I'm kind of glad to, because that's all I've consistently had. Right. And as I have this conversation with you, I realize that's all I've had consistently had my whole life.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's the only thing that I've ever, you can hear it the same way twice sometimes. What's happened with me now is obviously I've gotten stronger in my faith, etc. Which is already a whole other can of worms, because now just like there's the big box DJ and the play the record of that we need now DJ, there's the Republican Christianity and there's the spiritual Christianity.
Sure.
What's brought it back for me is the spiritual Christianity. But here's the thing, with my function with church now is I play guitar for our worship team.
Sure.
So every Sunday we're there just belting it out, 2 services, whatever. I'm with a great group of people, pretty much let me play the way that I want to play, as long as it complements what we're trying to do. And that outlet alone has been amazing to me. That's brought back an innocence, and you can never take for granted the nuances to playing guitar for God.
Sure.
Versus playing for chicks and beer.
Right.
So 2 totally different mindsets. I literally had to relearn how to play guitar, and I hadn't started playing again until maybe I can't tell the rest of the team this now, but surprise, I probably started playing maybe 6 months before I joined back. Oh, right. I also took 10, 12 years off from playing guitar altogether. Right. And then as a DJ, I thought guitar playing was stupid. So,
and I think it goes beyond, in just taking the concept of actual organized religion out of it and just making it a spiritual sense from top to bottom. I'll speak to something I've seen on your social media, and I didn't.
Oh, yes.
This is a surprise because I haven't told you about this, but there was something I saw. I was Facebook stalking you just the other day in preparation for this episode, and there's this video of you playing guitar and your kids singing Old Town Road. And it warmed my heart like none other. Because honestly, you talked about playing for your church and paying for a bigger spiritual, picture in life and restoring innocence. I do think like spreading that love amongst our children is kind of how we bring things back full circle. Is like we put these inflections upon our kids of the people that maybe we were when we got into these things.
Yes. Oh man, I didn't realize you'd seen that video, and I forgot about that video.
Oh, it's fantastic. It made me smile ear to ear. It's so good.
Yeah, it was amazing. Like, and eventually the kids finally were like, Dad, we're done. We're done rehearsing now. Like, go do something. Go watch TV or something. Because I was so into it with them, but it was just like, and that's the thing that I see where you're going with it. That does bring the innocence back. You know what I mean? That culminates all those late nights, all those like writing sessions. We could have nailed it this time, blah, blah, blah. To that moment, you know what I mean? Like it comes down to that. Yeah.
Right. Because that at some point in time, they're going to be us.
Yes. I hope they play instruments, but I don't know.
I covered this in an earlier episode. It's like as many times as I've tried, I can impart my will.
Yeah, right.
I mean,
right.
my daughter's quite a pianist, but her interests change like every 6 months.
Yeah. You never know, man. They might come back to it, or at least it builds that foundation.
Absolutely.
Or whatever. Yeah, but yeah. So some things that have turned the and here's the other thing too. When I quit playing guitar, I was in a rut.
Right.
And I had to go away from it. I almost had to relearn how to play. I knew I could eventually learn how to play. Thank God. Unless something weird really went wrong. But playing again in a worship setting, you get such a taste for the nuance.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I'm not here to preach or whatever. And Christianity in and of itself, to be honest, if anybody's listening going, oh, but Christians. No, you're right. Like I totally get it, how they can be. They're definitely pushed me away from the church for a long time till I found the right one.
Right.
But playing worship, like literally, and I tell my worship teammates this all the time. I'm like, this saves my life. Like there were weeks where I only left the house to do this.
Right. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. I think that is a great place to wrap this up. Eric, I love you, man. I am so glad you're here sitting across from me.
I'm sorry I got you canceled.
You didn't get me canceled at all. I'm gonna make sure everybody listens to this because this is 20 years of of brotherhood that I do not ever take for granted. So I appreciate you.
Yeah, man, you're always family. If you come back up to the scary north, man, let me know. Stop by the house.
I'm in Lincoln. He's in Omaha. just for transparency here.
Right. Hint: it's District 2.
Oh man, thanks very much for doing this, buddy. You got anything you want to plug before we?
No, listen, man, I love you, and I'm glad we got a chance to get together under this context.
Yeah,
there's definitely more discussions, but those definitely have to take place offline before people really give up on us.
I tell you what, this probably ain't going to be the last time we do this together. So,
oh man, no,
there'll be many more Sweet Life Mikey C episodes in the future.
I just want to let you know, man, though, but seriously, like it just is, I just hope this underscores to anybody who channels music or something like that as an outlet. When you find the right people in life, they can bring that out of you as well.
Yes.
And the funny thing is when they bring that out of you, you can never put it back.
Right.
Like it's always there.
Right.
So, for what it's worth, like just if you love music, the fellowship of music and things like that, and you finally find those other people who feel it and hear it the same way you do, like hold on to that. Hold on to that.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Once again, I want to thank my very good friend Eric Swanson, or as a lot of you know him as DJ Sweet Life, for coming down to the Clark Dungeon and recording this episode of the podcast with me today. And since records seem to be a reoccurring theme of this episode of the podcast, I'm going to sound like a broken record and thank all of you for listening to the podcast and sending me all the messages you've been sending through Instagram, Facebook, or even text messages the past few weeks. And if you could continue to show that support by leaving a 5-star review on your very favorite podcast app or on my Caught on the Mic Facebook page, it would be much appreciated. Please recommend this podcast to some of your friends. We want to increase the listenership so we can do more cool things in the future. With 2020 about to wrap up, I'm hoping to get 4 to 6 more episodes on your podcast app before the year's end. This has been Caught on the Mic with Michael Clark. Until next time, thank you.